ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकम्.
Hello, friends. We are back with another beautiful episode on Mritunjaya, a series on death and dying. And today we have Ranika with us. Hi, Ranika. Namaste.
Hi, ma'am. Namaste.
And this series is something that came up in my mind because I heard a lot of people, especially a lot of young people with a lot of death related angst. Um, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk about death and losing your loved ones. Because as we know, in the beginning of life, birth, there is suffering. Towards the end of life, also, there is suffering. And in between that, there is aging and illness. And we are all going to go through a part of our aging and illness. And if we do not have to suffer through this process, then we have to understand death in a more deeper manner. So Ranika is here with us, and I'm sure she has some great insights about death. And Ranika, you're going to talk about your father's demise
Yes.
and how it has affected you prior to him going away, and of course, post that. So, thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you for having me
I
here.
always say sharing is caring. I share because I care not only for my loved ones, but for society at large, for people at large, because everybody's story is going to have some amount of suffering. And so I think it's great that you come to share. So, Ranika, tell us something about your dad first. Kind of person he was.
First, yes.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am, for allowing me this opportunity to share my journey. My father was a diplomat by profession and very bright, very intelligent. And I was very close to my father. In around 2012 or so, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And that was quite devastating for us as a whole family, because considering just how brilliant he was, for something like dementia to set in was very sad. But we tried our best with different forms of treatments, but unfortunately it's a progressive disease and can be very traumatic for the patient as well as the caregivers. And that happened in our family, and we suffered close to 4 years. 2 years he was still mobile, and 2 years he was completely bedridden. So these times were very traumatic for us, me, my siblings, and my mother as well. And we all tried to stay strong for one another. And I guess everyone had their own ways of emoting the tragic events. And for me, I started emoting in the form of poetry. And because that was the only way, I tried to stay strong for everybody else. I was not very vocal about my emotions. And I ended up writing a lot of poems on him, odes to him, as well as around the sufferings that are around me. And I hoped one day to publish this small collection of poems for other people also, just to share the angst and the emotional the sorrow as well, because we all go through the same thing, and it's just that nobody ever really writes. But when you read about somebody else, or like this series is talking about other people's pain, so we realize, that there are a lot more people who are going through the same process. I would like to start off with a poem that I wrote for my father. This was written in 2015, November. We lost our father in 2016, December. And it's been 4 years now since we lost his father. So this poem is about how I was struggling to keep his memories alive and all the teachings that he gave us, to be on the path that he had set for us. So if I have your permission, I'd like to share this. I pledge within to keep alive your strength, your knowledge, your will to fight, to keep abreast the things you taught when your mind comes to naught. Let nothing wither my way in life when memories fight to turn to ice. For as you fight a battle forlorn, I fight mine to keep them warm. As the dawn will turn to dusk and glint of life will turn to rust, I'll keep alight the sparkling shine, the wisdom of your brilliant mind. I promise to not let them down, for they rose me up from the ground. All the things you'd have me fought when your mind sleeps to naught.
I love that. When your mind sleeps to naught.
Sleeps to naught, yes. So there were many that spoke of his dementia. I had another one which was called A Faded Mind. So hopefully one day I would get to publish these.
I'm sure, and it will help so many people.
Yes.
Alzheimer is a very difficult condition, especially for the caregiver.
Yes.
I think your poems will express that, so please go ahead.
Yes. And the interesting thing that happened after my father passed away was I started dreaming about him very soon after his death. And I saw him in the current state where he passed away. He was in a very bad state. And he used to come to me in my dreams in that state. And slowly I saw him get better. He started moving his limbs, everything in my dream. And these dreams are also very traumatic because I did not know how to decipher them, why they were happening. I realized that it was from personal trauma, and nobody else in my family was getting those dreams of him. And the dreams were like in reverse, and they lasted almost 3 years.
Okay.
Where he started walking, then he started talking, he started getting normal, he started eating. And the last dream of him was when he had retired as diplomat. And he was like taking us out on a holiday, and I saw him in that same state in 1995 was when he retired. And that was the last dream I had of him. Okay. And that was when I realized, I just took it as a sign that my father is telling me that he's okay now. It was like a healing process somewhat. And from his death to 95, so it was like a period from 2016 and going back in time to 1995. And I had these dreams sometimes on a weekly basis, monthly basis, and they just kept coming. And he started getting better and better and better in the dream.
Right. Very interesting. Very, very interesting, Ranika. It's like we are so caught up with the physical form, and that he can't eat or he can't walk or Like we see the deterioration of the physical body,
Yes.
but we are unable to sense the essence that is possibly trying to communicate to us that actually I'm getting better within myself.
Yes.
It's like the
Yes.
physical form is going to go, it's going to deteriorate and leave, but I'm utilizing this time to, in a way, heal myself, cleanse myself, and slowly, slowly, slowly get better before I
Yes.
leave the physical form.
Right.
So for me, the dream or the kind of the dream visuals that were coming to you about your dad is more about in this physical body as I deteriorate, I am getting better and better and better before I leave this body. So when I'm born again, I'm born absolutely fine. So I
Very
think that's
nice.
really what I'd look at this dream as. But very interesting that in your
Yes.
dream, your father is somebody else,
Yes.
and in physical reality, your father looks somebody else. So there is a
Yes.
duality that
Yes.
I'm coping with. In
Yeah.
my subtle reality, there's another reality, and in my physical reality, there's another reality. I mean, that's quite stressful for somebody to go through.
Yes. And it was very traumatic because I used to wake up crying. I mean, I used to tell my husband, I keep dreaming like this. Why aren't these dreams not going? My mother was like saying, we don't get any such dreams. Why are they coming to you?
Right.
And uh, uh, I used to, the traumatic period that we suffered for 4 years
Yes.
was, it kind of overshadowed the entire life of his. And we were not able to get out of this frame of mind. I wanted to remember him as he was, but without grief, I could not do that. And somehow these dreams allowed me to go to that stage where I could now remember him as, when he was in perfect health,
Yes.
absolutely fine.
And that's such a relief at some level.
It is,
How
yes.
did you see him kind of deteriorate? You can just share your feelings at that time, especially your other members of your family. How did they cope with this deterioration?
It was extremely difficult. We had some family friends who went through the same process, and we were just almost praying that, this does not happen to us as a family. This does not happen to our father as a patient. Uh, for 2 years, he has lost his memory. He had lost his memory. He would forget his home actually, and we had attendants for him to take care of it. But then, these Alzheimer's patients, they lose their sense of swallowing,
Okay.
and he aspirated.
Okay.
So his lungs got filled up with fluid, whether it was saliva or the previous dinner, and he woke up one day early in the morning, and he was almost blue, and he could not breathe properly. So we called up the ambulance. We had to take him to the hospital, and the hospital kind of revived him. He was put on ventilator, and that was a very tough decision, which sometimes I feel maybe we could have taken a decision otherwise, but in trying to save your loved one, you sometimes prolong their
Suffering.
condition. Yes, the suffering. And that is exactly what happened with my father.
So for how long was he on the ventilator? Invasive ventilator?
Yes, he was in hospital for a duration of 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
And he would keep getting on and off the ventilator every 3 days, 4 days. And it's a very sad state of affairs that, in India, still people are not able to understand Alzheimer's and handle the patients. So while he was in hospital, we were still being told by the doctor that you can feed him small amounts of food. Try doing that. And that he would aspirate, and then he would again go into the ICU.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
And then he would be on the ventilator for a couple of days. And then when they would revive him, he would come back to the normal ward. And again, they would say, okay, start feeding him with a spoon, semi-liquid, and then he would aspirate. And so it was extremely painful. And there was one traumatic episode where I was giving him some tea or something like that, just a liquid to drink, and he aspirated in front of me. He just held my hand, and the hospital people, they just rushed. We have to take him to the ICU, and my dad's grip was so strong. He just couldn't. He was not letting go of my hand, and I think for close to 3 years that haunted me like anything. I used to wake up in the middle of the night, because he was like, his eyes wide, not able to breathe, and that grip, he would not let go of my hand. And that was a very, very traumatic episode. It lasted just for maybe, half a minute, maybe 30 seconds or so, but it was very shattering.
It etched in your mind. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would remember that and just break out in tears.
But
this even after 3 years.
But during that time, was there ever a moment, because I've noticed that people with Alzheimer's, and I've read that somehow at times they become very lucid, like their thinking
Yes.
becomes very clear, and you're surprised.
Yes.
How come Dad's saying something like this? So,
Yes.
has there been any moment like that?
There were many moments like that, and he used to start. He was very good with Urdu.
Mm-hmm.
He knew Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu, and English. So he used to even write the script. And there was a time where he used to start writing Urdu.
During those periods?
During that period, yes. And this was a time when, his signature also had changed. But he would just scribble and scribble and scribble and scribble. And during one of these phases, I read him a couple of poems. And some of the poems are a little bit complicated, which not everybody would understand. And I was surprised. My father, he understood them.
Okay.
I gave him a printout. I said, Dad, can you read these for me? And he read. I said, what is it? He said, it's a poem. I said, what does it mean? Can you explain? And he explained the poems, what they were in a sense, because he used to like poetry himself. And like during our PLR course, I told you that I was into Sufi poetry. I was a big fan of Sufi poetry. So this is something that I picked up from my father.
Right.
And he used to write as well during his younger days. So I was very amazed. He was a person who would forget that my nephew is actually his grandson and not his son. But when I showed him a poem, he knew what the poem meant. So he used to mix up our names, but when we used to put his favorite songs, he could recognize who is the singer.
Yeah.
So it's very surprising. I mean, in day-to-day life, the memory is really short-term memory is no longer there. And past memory, but memories that are engraved, he could recognize Gurdas Man. He could recognize I'm forgetting his name right now. Jagjit Singh. Various other singers. He could immediately understand, and he could recite the couplet also if they were singing. Yeah. So these things were still there, and to see such a person forgetting your name.
Yeah, I think it's so sad, because here's a person like your dad, a diplomat, intelligent, action-oriented, into so many things, and suddenly you see him deteriorate like this, and knowing full well that somewhere there is that knowledge.
Yes,
but
exactly.
It's not visible, not to him, not to us.
Yes.
But there is this great storehouse of knowledge that is there, and it's really a very, very sad state to be in. The condition itself is so sad. So then, Ranika, how were his last days?
His last days were very painful. After he came out from the hospital, he had he was being fed through the pipe, and he had a tracheostomy, which was to allow all the suction of the mucus, and of course then the urine bag and everything. And slowly, I mean, he was completely bedridden. And initially, even at the hospital, they used to tie up his hands because they don't understand we are not supposed to remove the pipe.
Yeah.
He would try to remove the tracheostomy tube. And slowly, after 1 year, he even lost that grip and he was completely bedridden. And by the time he was in bed for like 2 years, towards his end days, his body has completely crippled. It had almost shrunk where his legs turned up, and he almost looked like a mummy, like a dug up mummy.
Mm.
He had lost, it was just bones with skin on top. And he used to still look around. And I mean, that was his fighting spirit. I used to so much pray that, he would just sleep his days through, but no, he was alert. He would look around when you move. And that was extremely traumatic about what he would be thinking at that point of time.
I think suffering is for the person who's sick, and suffering is for the person who observes the sick person. It is unimaginable how we suffer when we watch our loved ones suffer. It's
Yes.
you can't explain it sometimes in words what happens to you, your
Exactly.
emotions. So
Yes.
Ranika, at that moment, when Dad was going through this really difficult time of his life before he moved on, um, did you ever pray that he moves on quickly, that he doesn't
Yes.
suffer?
We did. Yes. Yes. Almost on a daily basis. It is not worth letting your loved ones suffer. It's not a life to live. And we sincerely, wish that he would not suffer more. And I used to speak to him. I used to tell him that it's okay to let go. You don't have to fight now. And at times I used to say sorry also. I used to apologize to him that I cannot do anything more. I tried my best. And he used to listen. I used to somehow feel he understands, the way he would, his expression would change, or the way he would look. It would sometimes not be random. Sometimes he would just look at you, gaze at you in a lost way, and sometimes he would look at you with recognition. So yes, we went through that phase as well, where we actually prayed that he should not suffer more.
It is such an amazing thing that we talk a lot about, kind of detachment.
Yes.
And this is what you're talking about, is an attached detachment, where you're attached to somebody and you're hoping to detach.
Yes.
Such a profound, and um, it is beautiful. Actually, it's beautiful, that we are wanting detachment from the person
Yes.
whom
Yeah.
you're so attached to. And that
Right.
moment, I'm sure you must have written something on this.
I
Those
guess
last pages.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
please share if you can.
I will. Okay. I have a couple of more that I had kept ready actually, and I mean some of them are very very traumatic.
Please share one. I think to
Yes.
help others who are going through the same trauma, to listen to some word, because poetry touches your heart.
This is called A Faded Mind.
Faded mind, beautiful.
Yes. And I had written this in 2014. It goes like this: lost time and lost learnings, lost was sand in tidal turnings, with senses that will frost to mine, amongst memories that were lost in time. A lifetime that now seems in shatters, stories, paths that fall to scatters. A task of emotions to embalm, to immortalize, a soul to calm. To live the thoughts that formed your mind, and preachings that are hard to find. Saving that which may just fade beyond the life your hands had made. Held within our wisdoms, our words of gold, guided by a wisdom old, searching memories hard to find, lost forever in a faded mind.
Searching memories hard to find, lost
Lost forever. forever in a fading mind.
Wow.
So,
Beautiful.
so this was what we were just talking about, a task of emotions too unbound to immortalize a soul to come. This is where we were actually praying that he does not suffer more.
But the person who's suffering somehow continues suffering because his time hasn't come to leave. And to understand this deeper meaning of suffering is so important. You know, the Dalai Lama has a beautiful quote where he says that tragedy should be utilized as a source of strength, which actually you did. You know, and no matter what sort of difficulties, how painful experience is, if we lose hope, that's a real disaster. So somewhere, you know, we keep hoping that the suffering has some deeper meaning.
Exactly.
Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma mritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti. Shanti.